All right, kids, here we are. Here we go. Happy Monday, March 20th, 2023. May I be the first to say a good afternoon to you and yours. SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. We get cranked up with the Matt Murphy portion of the broadcast day at 12:05. It is our episode 301, and we're pleased you've joined us, whether you're listening on, well, the radio, 99.7 FM. Perhaps you're on one of our different applications. There's TuneIn, there's iHeart. You can go directly to the website. You can go over to our app or on SuperTalk TV watching the proceedings. I hate that for you, considering I have to look at my face every day. Facebook Live, Twitter, Facebook, I mentioned that, YouTube and Twitch. You can find us there, and we appreciate all of you being a part of the show. Hopefully for a full 3 hours, but whatever amount of time you give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. We've lots to do on this Monday, and it's going to be an incredible and busy week, and we'll crank it up as we normally do. We get right into it. So Donald Trump says he's arrested tomorrow. I don't know if that's the case, but Donald Trump may very well be indicted this week. The President of the United States has said over the weekend he expects to be arrested by Tuesday, tomorrow, by New York prosecutors in a case over hush money by a porn star named Stormy Daniels and a connection to said hush money over whether or not it benefited him in a federal election in 2016. I'm going to work through some of the details on all of this. Much of it has already been hashed out for those who are interested. But for those of you in Aniana, we're going to go over it yet again just to make sure you understand what we're dealing with. I won't be laborious with it, but I will say this. Donald Trump is calling on individuals to protest over what is a clear partisan political hack job in New York City by the New York DA. A DA, by the way, when he was initially elected, declined to do any of this. He declined to prosecute at all. And now, because of a liberal pressure campaign, he has come back for another bite at the apple. More on that in a moment. But Donald Trump says he'll be arrested, and he says that we should take to the streets and protest. Here's what I would say. Now, you are the smartest listening audience on planet Earth. Those of you that invest your time with Nashville's Morning News or Michael Del Giorno, I honor myself to say Matt Murphy. I'm honored to be in this group of individuals is what I mean to say. Or Brian Wilson on the drive. We try to keep you as informed as humanly possible, and we believe that we accomplish that goal. Wherever you fall on any variety of issues that we bring up on a day-to-day basis, information-fueled and opinion-driven, that's our mantra at SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. And truly, talk radio has become that electronic town square. We're not talking about you. We're talking about the people that don't pay that much attention. Those that might get their news from, I don't know, a Twitter post or two, or God forbid, TikTok, or God forbid, ABC, NBC, CBS, the nightly news product that seems antiquated and outdated nowadays. Many, many Americans get their news from these types of sources, and they're woefully uninformed about what's going on. All they know is that Donald Trump, all they think they know is that Donald Trump did something wrong, and they've been after him for a while, and now they finally got him. How many times have liberals said they've got him? A lot. It's been quite a bit. I mean, since 2015, we've been hearing, oh, well, this will be the downfall of Trump. Oh, well, Billy Bush, this will be the downfall of Trump. Oh, well, this allegation, this will be the downfall. Over and over and over again. And the man, like a phoenix, rises from the ashes, only better and stronger. So I would say to you that if Donald Trump is in fact arrested tomorrow or this week at all, which would be an absolute circus beyond comprehension, I encourage you to take to the streets. I do. Your former president, the 45th president of the United States of America, has encouraged you to do so, and I encourage you to do so as well. But I do not believe that you should take to the streets to protest. I believe you should take to the streets to celebrate. Why celebrate, Murphy, you ask? This, if nothing else, will highlight to the people that have their heads in the sand on these issues how ridiculously partisan and unequal our justice system has become. Above all else, if this DA attempts to make a federal case, literally and figuratively, out of the information that we all know about, considering the amount of times that liberal Democrats have gotten off with much worse from a political perspective, this case will demonstrate to the American people, in my opinion, how partisan and ridiculous our justice system has become. Take to the streets not to protest, but to celebrate. This will be the best in-kind campaign donation that Donald Trump in 2024 could ever ask for. It highlights how desperately the political left has attempted to, quote, get Trump for the last 6.5 years. And they've gotten him on nothing. They made narratives up out of whole cloth in an effort to stop the guy, and they get nothing. I've long said one of the things that indicates to me more than anything how effective Trump was in 4 years of shaking up the political establishment is how desperate the political establishment is to keep him out of Washington, D.C. for another 4 years. Now, none of this has anything to do with the primary decision that all of us have to make. Each and every one of us will have to independently make it. I'm begging you to wait until 2024 to make any decision on your presidential candidate in the Republican Party. You'll have plenty of good choices. Now, if you have already decided you're Trump, I'm not hating on you for that. I just want you to wait and allow all of this to shake itself out. But it is a strong indicator that the two front runners scare the hell out of the leftist political bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. because of the nature and the manner in which they're talking about them. So take to the streets not to protest, but to celebrate what will be a revelation for many Americans that while Donald Trump is not a perfect guy, that while Donald Trump has done things wrong in his past, have not we all? He has done nothing illegal in this matter, and it is a stretch beyond comprehension to even bring these charges up to a grand jury and for a potential indictment. Now, the DA in this case, Alvin Bragg, has made no such statement with regard to whether or not an indictment will be forthcoming this week. But all signs, I should say, point to the idea that Bragg is indicting Donald Trump for his 2016 hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. So I think it merits kind of going over this and making sure that we understand where we are. I'll open up the phone lines coming up in just a couple of minutes for you to comment on this. I should table set that at 1 o'clock we'll shift our attention to Nashville politics and welcome to the show Jim Gingrich, who is running for mayor of Nashville. He's stopping by in studio to tell us about his run, to tell you a little more about him and what he could do for the state of Nashville in the coming years. And at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we've got John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association to talk to us about some of the gun legislation that is currently being debated in the General Assembly. There are a few other matters that we will get to as time allows. There's a confidence vote, we're told. There is a confidence vote in the Republican caucus in the Senate being held regarding Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally today, I'm told. I've not confirmed this with leadership, but I have one source that I trust telling me that there will be a private vote and that Randy McNally is expected to pass with flying colors a confidence vote amongst his peers. In other words, without any additional information coming out about the, dare I call it a scandal, the mild scandal involving Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally and some of his text message exchanges with certain individuals that seem to be odd. That's saying the least of it. Apparently, this is not enough to shake the confidence of most of his Republican colleagues because we're being told that a vote will be held, and while some have consternation about his continued service as lieutenant governor, most in that body are comfortable with him serving, at very least, the rest of this term. So there's that going on. I have an update on COVID-19. I do not know when this Fauci video that came out over the weekend was actually recorded, but I just saw it over the weekend, and I can find no better illustration about what the government was selling during COVID-19 and how the American public was not buying. And Anthony Fauci was in the African-American community trying to sell it on black folk that the COVID-19 shot was altogether good and safe and wouldn't hurt you at all. And his interaction with a resident of the community that he was in is absolutely priceless, and we'll play some of the audio for you there. Ron DeSantis is in as a presidential candidate. He's not said as much, but he has indicated as much privately to donors, and a lot of this is leaking out now that he's meeting with donors and he's setting up some money transfers and whatnot. You got to get your money in place if you're running for president. I mean, it's a multi-billion dollar, it's hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of what you have to have in place in order to win the presidency, and apparently he's doing that. And I got to tell you, with Ron DeSantis, I still maintain to you that the two front runners, we don't have enemies in this selection. We only have differences of opinion, and those will play themselves out over the next several months into 2024. But Ron DeSantis was asked, absent a presidential announcement, he was asked about his role in the Donald Trump indictment and whether or not he would be asked to expedite Trump's travel from Florida to New York. I mean, if you're going to indict and arrest a guy and all of this is a political circus, you would want to have a perp walk, right? I would assume. And some are questioning whether or not Ron DeSantis would have the ability to stop that. So we've got that going on. We've got the inept Biden administration regarding their foreign policy. I want to talk to you about that. There's just a lot of things. We just have an alphabet soup of selected topics that we'll cover for you on the show today. It's 12:17 on SuperTalk 99.7 WT. And your calls always welcome in. You can also super text us 615-737-9986. And I try to catch some of the chat feature on the television side of things as well. For those of you on that side, if you hit me up on the chat, we'll try to communicate with you as time allows. All right, so what are the charges against Donald Trump? What does all of this mean? So in 2015, after Donald Trump made his announcement that he was running for president of the United States, a woman by the name of Stormy Daniels, that is her stage name. I forget her real name. Stephanie Clifford, I think her real name is. A woman by the name of Stormy Daniels stepped forward with a story to tell. She says she worked in America's pornographic movie industry or video industry for a number of years, was familiar with Trump, and made a claim that she had had a dalliance with the media and real estate mogul. So this obviously got a lot of attention amongst the mainstream media. Very early on, they looked at Donald Trump as more of a clown show and nothing to be taken seriously. So they didn't really take it seriously, but they reported on this, that there was the possibility that this story would be coming out. Donald Trump is reportedly good friends with the head of the National Enquirer, a man by the name, unfortunately in this situation, of Pecker. So, Mr. Pecker, head of the National Enquirer, gets on the phone with Trump. These are the allegations now. And says, hey, I have this woman coming forward wanting to sell me her story regarding an intimate relationship with you. Well, you can't have that. And reportedly, Donald Trump managed to get to a private attorney by the name of Michael Cohen and buy the story in front of the National Enquirer. Now, the National Enquirer would have bought the story, but they had no intention of running it, inasmuch as Mr. Pecker was friends with Mr. Trump. You with me so far? Nothing illegal about anything that I've just told you, by the way. So Michael Cohen sets up an agreement, an arrangement with Stormy Daniels, in as much as he will pay $130,000 for Stormy Daniels to not tell her story. And eventually, Michael Cohen was reimbursed through legal fees for his trouble in helping make this situation go away. So all of that, which I have told you, is the genesis of what Alvin Bragg is going to bring or has brought to a grand jury in New York. And all of that is what involves the charges that we're set to see over the next several days. There are some more complexities because that in and of itself is not against the law in any way outside of a potential misdemeanor that would have expired under the statute of limitations some years ago that they mislabeled legal expenses on Donald Trump's tax reporting. Because Donald Trump called the $130,000 legal expenses paid to his lawyer, Michael Cohen. So you could make an argument that back in 2018 that Mr. Trump mislabeled the payment that he was making to Stormy Daniels through an intermediary, but that would have been a misdemeanor, and that statute expired several years ago. So Bragg has to bend over backwards in order to make this case work. And I'll explain how he's doing that in just a moment. 1221, take your calls on it. This first hour, it is SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. You know what's a big deal when they get the big guns out slinging the promo? Brian Wilson just telling you about this incredible dinner at the Parthenon Grill, March 30th, a couple of weeks from now. No, less than 10 days. 10 days from now, Matt Murphy, Dan Mandis, Brian Wilson, Michael D. for an evening with WTN at the Parthenon Grill, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, joining us for an incredible dinner. I've never been to the Parthenon Grill, but I hear some incredible things. But I've been to one of these events, and I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love getting to meet and getting to know you. I've loved that for the first 15, 16 months of my time here in Nashville, in Middle Tennessee. Cannot wait. Murfreesboro was one of the first places that I considered settling down. It's a beautiful community, and I love going back there when I have the opportunity. Tickets include an entree of your choice, grilled chicken or sirloin with all the fixins and whatnot, and you'll obviously get to meet us. You'll get to hear and see what we do. Break bread with us as we talk about the issues of the day. Heck, we might get to talk about the perp walk that will come later on in the week. Go to 997WTN.com for more information. That's 997WTN.com. 1226 on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. So, by the way, I'm getting pushback on the Super Text line. All I can tell you is the man's name is David Pecker, and he is the CEO of American Media. He was the publisher of Men's Fitness, Muscle and Fitness. Stop! Don't look at me. Chris Webber's producing the show today, by the way, in Belle K's absence. Belle is out for the week on vacation, gallivanting across the country. Chris just got back from vacation.
I did, yeah.
How was that?
It was something. Heck of a road trip.
Did you guys do anything that you care to talk about on the radio?
Well, we did several things.
Yeah?
Didn't get to do some things. We got caught in the midst of the nor'easter.
Ooh.
That swept through New York and Massachusetts and New England area.
Oh, you were up on the eastern seaboard.
Yep.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like traffic and Yankees.
There's plenty of both.
There's a bunch of that. Well, that's cool. Well, I'm pleased that Chris is performing double duty, as Belle K did last week. Belle was shifting over to the afternoon side of things, and Chris is sliding back to the midday side of things. So I thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Very welcome.
David Pecker. Don't look. So you are not allowed to look at me for the rest of this segment.
All right.
Don't
Fair
look
enough.
at me, because I don't want to. Because if you do, okay, no looking. David Pecker was the publisher of Men's Fitness, Muscle and Fitness. Pecker managed Flex magazine, as well as Fit Pregnancy. Apparently, Pecker had knowledge about that sort of thing. And Shape and Star magazine. He was also and is also the publisher of National Enquirer, Sun, Weekly World News, and Globe. So he is personal friends with Donald Trump. So Trump faces, legal threats in this New York case, which would easily be dismissed outside of any jurisdiction outside of the city of New York. As a matter of fact, Alvin Bragg himself is struggling to twist and contort state law to effectively prosecute what is a federal case that has been rejected by the Justice Department. By the way, I just, for the record, the Justice Department turned this case down against Trump over his so-called hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. In 2018, according to Jonathan Turley, the federal case was already difficult under existing election law, and now what they're trying to do is take a case that was rejected by the feds in 2018 and turn it into a state case. Now, is all of this an embarrassment? Well, sure. It is an embarrassment in the sense that a gentleman is being accused of an extramarital affair, and he happened to be the 45th president of the United States of America. But this is also nothing new. Is it illegal to demonstrate that someone paid money to cover up an embarrassing affair? Of course it's not. That is not illegal. Hey, I don't want you telling people about what we did. If I pay you some money, will that make it ease the burden on you to a certain degree that you don't pay, that you don't? Now, you can't do that with a threat, because once you start threatening people, then you start getting into the arena of extortion or whatnot. So what the suggestion is, bottom line it, from Alvin Bragg is that he specifically covered up the affair because of his potential presidency, as opposed to protecting one's celebrity reputation or protecting one's marriage, etc. By the way, this case has been prosecuted before. Very similar case involving another former presidential candidate in the form of John Edwards. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Get your thoughts on it as well as we continue in the lunchtime hour on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. It's 12:31. Statistics demonstrate that people with hearing loss wait years before they seek professional help. I guess I can understand why, folks. You want to believe that it will go away on its own. You want to believe that it will not get any worse. And sadly, most often, those two things are not the case. With people waiting years before they actually go to professionals, I don't want you to be that number in that statistic. I want you to go see Ronnie and his team at Brentwood Hearing Center. I want you to schedule that appointment today, as a matter of fact. The doctors of audiology will visit with you. They'll sit down, discuss the situations where you're having difficulty hearing. Maybe it's in a group setting. Maybe you can't hear the television, have to turn that up way louder than the rest of the family wants to hear it. They have the latest hearing technology, the latest audio devices, and the technology is simply incredible. If you've not experienced a hearing device lately, it's time to get with Brentwood Hearing Center and their incredible doctors of audiology. Brentwood Hearing Center, they'll help tailor an individualized plan for your hearing needs. Go online to BrentwoodHearingCenter.com. That's BrentwoodHearingCenter.com or 615-377-0420. 377-0420. Brentwood Hearing Center. Better hearing for a better life.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11 or jumping into energy stocks or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
SuperTalk 99.7 WTN walking through some of the ridiculous justification on the part of Alvin Bragg and others regarding the potential indictment of a former president of the United States. Obviously, this is history-making, and the possible arrest of the president of the United States, former president, I should say, Donald Trump, as he announced over the weekend. No, I seriously doubt that the Democrats and the prosecutors in this case, but I repeat myself, I seriously doubt they would be dumb enough to try to perp walk Donald Trump. If they do it, as I said over the weekend, and many on the political left either intentionally or unintentionally misconstrued what I was saying. Not if they indict Donald Trump. That's one thing. But if at some point the political left in the United States of America attempts to perp walk Donald Trump, it demonstrates to me that not only do they not care about the rule of law, they don't care about the safety of our communities, because it would sadly upset enough people that it would provide tinder to the potential fire that could erupt in unlawful protest. Any arrest based on a flimsy case connecting a variety of different criminal codes and statutes is, to say the least, political, as I wrote over the weekend. And these SOBs on the left are not above using this clown show to bait good Americans into unlawful activity. And we can fight back without taking that bait. We can fight back with facts. So here are some of the facts in the case, just to arm you with some information, real quick. So Donald Trump reportedly paid $130,000 in the fall of 2016 to cut off or reduce public fallout from what was considered to be a scandal between himself and Stormy Daniels. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, who hated and always has hated Donald Trump, pursued him and his associates in a number of different investigations. This is what ultimately caught up with Michael Cohen, his former personal attorney. But it ultimately rejected a prosecution of him based on election violations or election law or campaign violations. Said, well, there was nothing wrong here. They were not alone. According to Jonathan Turley, the Federal Election Commission chair also said that there was really no basis in law to prosecute Donald Trump under this. Prosecutors working under Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance, also rejected the viability of using New York law to effectively charge what is a federal offense. Most importantly, Bragg himself, when he came into office, shut down the case. Alvin Bragg was the guy, remember the guy a year or so ago that said, we don't have anything here, we're done? Well, he shut it down. When he did, Carrie Dunn and Mark Pomerantz resigned in protest. Pomerantz then launches a media campaign against Bragg, commenting on a still pending investigation, which you're not supposed to do, made it clear that Trump was guilty, which you're not supposed to do, even though his former office had, up until that point, declined to charge him with anything. Then Pomerantz wrote a book. Published a book detailing the case, a case that had yet to be decided within a grand jury setting, much less a criminal trial, which is obviously poisoning the well, but the liberals don't care. They just ignore it. So this media campaign and media blitz in the aftermath of the guy's book was such a success that it pushed Bragg into reopening an investigation that he wanted closed. Now, they have not said one word about what the state charges are going to be in this case. But Jonathan Turley, a voice that I strongly recommend you follow, a person that I strongly recommend you follow, he's appearing on Fox. He appears on Fox News quite a bit, and he is a fabulous legal mind. I think he teaches at Georgetown still. And he's got a website, jonathanturley.com. As Turley writes, most likely the state charges fall under Section 175, which is a statute involving falsifying business records. This is based, as I was talking about earlier, on the claim that Donald Trump used legal expenses to conceal the hush money payment that were supposedly used to violate federal election law. Now, some legal experts say that concealment is a criminal matter and must be charged. Those legal experts said not one word about Hillary Clinton when she did the exact same thing regarding the Steele dossier, using it as a legal expense. Ultimately, by the way, Hillary Clinton pleaded guilty in that case of pushing false Russian collusion claims against Trump in 2016. It buried the funding in one of their legal documents. It was a legal payment to an intermediary that eventually went to Christopher Steele. Section 175 is a misdemeanor, so they paid a fine and they're fine. The only way to convert this to a felony, y'all follow me here. I know this is complex. See, even if Donald Trump was guilty of the misdemeanor, that statute of limitations is long gone. They can't charge him with that anymore unless they can convert it to a Class E felony, which requires, quote, showing that the intent to defraud includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal the commission thereof. That other crime, according to Turley, would appear to be the federal election violation, which the Justice Department has declined to charge him with. All right, so I don't roll your eyes. Bear with me here. I know this is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. That's the entire reason that I'm explaining it all to you. All of this is nonsense. So they're mad about the hush money, but they can't do anything about the hush money, even if they convinced a jury that that was specifically designed to help him in that election. They can't do anything about the hush money. So they have to convert it into another crime. That other crime would be the federal election violation that the Justice Department has already said they're not interested in pursuing. Well, the state can't necessarily prosecute for the federal election violation, but they can use that to suggest that Section 175 was violated while committing a federal crime, so they can raise it from a misdemeanor to a felony so that they can charge him at all. Everybody with me? Everybody with me so far? So Turley then notes that Bragg's office ran out of time to prosecute this as a misdemeanor charge years ago. The statute of limitation is 2 years, as I noted. Even if he shows that it is a felony charge, that's a 5-year statute of limitation, and he's run out of that too. Of course, none of this matters. It is all the liberal left have to hang on to. They have been promised for years that they're going to get a Donald Trump prosecution. And there simply is no there there. So circling back around, why do I tell you that it is time to celebrate? Because this is going to demonstrate to the American people who rightly so have a certain level of consternation about Trump's style. This is going to reassert how dangerous he is to the political left and the BIC, the bureaucrat industrial complex that exists in the United States federal government in Washington, D.C. He is a threat and a danger to them. And they will attempt by any means necessary to get Trump, orange man bad. For Americans that don't pay that much attention, Americans are so smart. Average folks are so smart in their guts. You know, my grandpa used to say that they ought to call common sense uncommon sense because he doesn't see a lot of it walking around anymore. But the common sense of the average American person flies above this political garbage. And they know something is garbage when they see it. And what I just described to you is absolute garbage. Donald Trump will be elevated as a result of this. Whether you're a Trump supporter or not, I imagine that weighs heavily on how you feel about that. But it is a fact. From the super text line, what do you say about it? And by the way, you can always call. Well, I don't know if you can or not. I don't know. We're iffy on the phones today, right?
It may or may not work. I'm not sure.
Well, give it a go.
Give it a try.
Give it a shot. Let Chris Webber see that you love him. 615-737-9986. We've had a couple of technical issues earlier. Matt, have you ever thought about having Pastor Greg Locke on your show? Just a thought. I have, actually. What was it? Greg Locke he's like a known commodity in the Middle Tennessee area. I don't know the guy very well. There was some case that came up recently where Locke was screaming and yelling about his phone number being put on a bathroom stall. He's a pastor, right? And apparently he was very upset at someone in local media that posted a photograph of his cell phone on a bathroom stall saying that he was going to go after that guy or something or another. That's all I know about Greg Locke. Hey, Matt, I saw you at a restaurant in Hendersonville, Moby Dick's, Friday night. Hesitated to say something. I saw you, 0135. You were sitting at a table. I walked by you. We locked eyes. I almost said something to you, but I didn't want to presume that you knew who I was and I knew who you was, so I didn't say anything. Say something to me. Always. If you see me out and about, I love saying hello to all of you. And, yes, I was at Moby Dick's on Friday night and had a great time. But I know you, 0135, because we locked eyes and I said, ooh, that guy knows me. But, see, I never know if you like me or don't like me. So I typically don't I wait for you to engage before I engage because I don't want to tick you off even more if you're already ticked off at me. Let's see. You underestimate the ignorance of the American. Maybe I do. I mean, look, I've been called a Pollyanna before. And I understand that a large portion of the American populace couldn't find their butts with a flashlight and a compass. I get that. But I have to believe that we have enough people that can see through this obvious garbage. If we don't, then we've already failed as a nation. This, to me, demonstrates the shameless partisanship that has become our Justice Department. It's always existed in some ways. But now more than ever, particularly with George Soros funding so many of these district attorney races, in which I believe the goal, when Soros is funding races in New York and Chicago and L.A. and Portland, Oregon, and all many different points in between. Atlanta, Georgia is another one. He is attempting to get soft DAs in place to allow criminal activity to run amok so as to sow discord in America's most populous cities to suggest to the American people that we are in such disarray. They are attempting to create turmoil on our streets so as to foment civil unrest. That's what they're trying to do. And I have to believe that we're smart enough to see beyond it. I also have to believe that you and I, as individuals that do or have supported Donald Trump, that we're smarter than they give us credit for with regard to this protest stuff. Donald Trump has called on people to protest. That is your God-given right. As sanctified by the First Amendment of the United States of America, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. You know, we focus so much on the front half of the First Amendment, we kind of lose something on the second half. You have every right in the world to peaceably gather together and to protest what your government is doing. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And the dunderheads on the mainstream media networks, as I saw them Saturday night and yesterday, oh, he's telling people he's trying to get another January 6th going. Shut up. The grown-ups are talking. Read the First Amendment. It's 1250 on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, LT360. Well, I'll be honest with you. You know, I mentioned that the wife and I were at a seafood restaurant on Friday night. They wouldn't have been necessarily proud of every choice that I made there at the table, but here's the great thing about LT360. Coach Scott, Coach Elizabeth, Dr. Underwood, they also understand that life happens and that sometimes you slip away from your overall goal. You can have an overall goal, and they do too, and that is health on a cellular level, health on a holistic level. But you can also do things that you probably know aren't best for your body and then try to get back on track in the coming days and the weeks. So you'll never find a judgmental character at LT360. That's not what they're there for. We're all there for the same thing, and that is to help you get healthy on a holistic level, on a cellular level that goes well beyond on a diet, off a diet, and that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, weight loss is not the ultimate goal and the ultimate game plan. The weight loss becomes a residual effect of being and living a healthier lifestyle. So I encourage you to go to LT360.com to start your journey today with Coach Scott, Dr. Underwood, and the rest of the crew. LT360.com. And when you do, tell them Matt Murphy sent you to LT360. 1257 SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. If you're attempting to engage on the phone lines, some mild technical issues. They just got more advanced there on my end. I think we're resetting. I think that's right. So my apologies my apologies to those of you trying to get through. Chris Webber, it's not his fault. He's saying hello. The phone won't let him.
Yeah.
Just,
Hey, I was on vacation, man. I wasn't even here to break something.
What was your favorite thing on vacay?
I've been asked that twice today. I don't really know. It was fun. I mean, we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was very cool. Could have spent a lot more time in there than we really had to spend.
How many hours?
I could have easily spent 6 hours in there.
Wow.
I spent 3, I think. And
see,
it felt
something like
rushed.
that, I always feel like my body shuts down before I want it to.
Yeah.
I want to keep engaging and reading and looking and seeing, but at some point I realize I gotta.
We'll never get through it.
Yeah, I've got to get away from it.
That was kind of how it was. Niagara Falls, we checked it out. That was interesting to see with the snow-covered, snow everywhere.
Was it your first time at Niagara?
Yeah, I'd never been. Yeah. So
so I recently went. What was your assessment?
It was. I wish I would have been able to go to the Canadian side. That's my assessment.
Yes.
Because it's, I think, a much better view from Canada than from New York.
Did you do the boat?
They don't do the boats in the wintertime.
Okay.
Apparently, they don't start back until like April.
So
we didn't get to do that.
Had we not done the boat, I would have been right there with you.
Yeah.
I would have felt the same because the American side gets a little. You don't get the views that the Canadians
You kind of get the angle. If you turn your neck just right, you can.
I never really understood Niagara Falls until I went and saw it myself. In terms of, I knew it was a waterfall, but I didn't get the whole 90-degree angle thing.
Yeah.
That it was coming from one angle and going to another one. But anyway, well, I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it's nice. That's nice. A lady drove her car off into the falls. Did you hear that story?
I did not hear it.
Okay. I'll tell you one of these days. It'll be good. All right, coming up, hopefully Jim Gingrich, who is a candidate for mayor, will be with us in the second hour of the Matt Murphy Show, and John Harris in the third hour. It's Matt Murphy on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. I could tell you all the specifics of Nashville Painting Company and what makes them a step above every other painting company in Nashville. I could tell you about the best brick painting warranty in Nashville, a 10-year warranty. I could tell you about the 3, 5, 7, and 10-year warranties available on all of the paint jobs that they do. I could tell you that there's a supervisor on every job that helps make sure that everything they promise, they deliver on time and superior to even your imagination. I could tell you that on Angie, they are a Super Service Award winner for the past 4 years in a row, and that is an incredible compliment. I can tell you that they're fully licensed and insured, but here's what I'll tell you. They are the best in the business because they believe in people. They get to know you. They get to know their customers. They want to please you. On the interior jobs that they do, on the exterior work that they do, they are the best in the business. I've known Jeremy for a long time. I consider him a friend, and he is a professional in this game. Nashville Painting Company, they've changed the game in Nashville, and they want to paint your house. NashvillePaintingCompany.com, 615-635-0350, 635-0350. All right, here we are. Here we go. 105, almost, 105. That's about right. SuperTalk 99.7, WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 3. The Drive with Brian Wilson from 3 until 7 o'clock. It is information-fueled and opinion-driven News Talk Radio for the masses on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. Watch us on SuperTalk TV. We're up and running, loud and proud. Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Thank you. For those of you consuming the product in that fashion, I'm especially appreciative because I have the proverbial face made for radio. Good afternoon. Also, online, on our apps, on TuneIn, on iHeart, all of those applications up and running as well. Per usual, the host has screwed up. I thought that Jim Gingrich was at 105. I am being told he's 135. So we'll have him from at around 1:35 this afternoon. If you do not know, Mr. Gingrich is running for mayor of Nashville. John Cooper has decided not to run for a second full term. And so there's an open field, and a number of individuals have announced their candidacy. Natisha Brooks announced hers on our radio show a couple of months ago. Jim Gingrich will be with us. I think Jeff Yarborough, who is a sitting state senator, Democrat, he has announced his candidacy. Freddie O'Connell is with the Metro Council. He's announced his candidacy. Heidi Campbell was on our show last week, and she made reference to exploring the possibility of a candidacy. And then there's Jim Gingrich. I don't know anything about Jim Gingrich. We'll find out together whether or not he's something that would help the city of Nashville and the metro region generally. So until then, you and I, 615-737-9986, discussing, obviously, the case as we understand it against Donald Trump. The political left over the weekend, as you might expect, on the mainstream media, they did zero examination into the facts of the case. I took 30 minutes of the first hour of the show and kind of ran down everything that we know about what possibly could be charged or how Donald Trump could possibly be charged. You pay money in this, hey, don't say anything scandal, and then eventually they turn that into some sort of federal election interference charge, and that is their hoops that they have to jump through to get to this. In 2013, for goodness sake. In the meantime, the New York grand jury is meeting. Trump continues to indicate that he will be arrested tomorrow. The New York City Police Department and the U.S. Secret Service are said to be huddling up in preparation for Donald Trump's possible indictment in Manhattan after the former president said he expected to be arrested. According to the New York Post, the FBI, state court officers, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office have also been kept in the loop on security discussions. The Big Apple bracing for the worst after Trump urged his followers to, quote, take our nation back in light of his looming indictment. We will use all of our available resources, said one New York City Police Department source. Obviously, they will. Protest does not, I guess that liberals get confused by this. Protest does not necessarily equal riots. A lawful and legitimate protest does not necessarily mean that things are going to get broken. As a matter of fact, a lawful protest would indicate that things don't get broken. What the lemmings on the left in the mainstream media circles, The alphabet soups, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC. Plus, you add in the New York Times, Washington Post, and then, of course, the sleazebags over at #NeverCNN. What a gross group of individuals. Don't support that network. I'll watch so you don't have to. They're not examining any of the facts of the case. What they're attempting to do is to turn, I believe this, is to turn Donald Trump's call for peaceful protest into another January 6th. I believe it with my heart and every fiber of my being that the gross individuals at #NeverCNN want to see something like this again. As disturbing as it was the first time, great for ratings for them, right? And it gave them something to talk. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine being a decision maker at #NeverCNN? You gross people knowingly advanced a political lie for 2.5 years. For 2.5 years. You cannot tell me, with all of the resources of #NeverCNN, that the higher-ups at #NeverCNN, at that time it was Jeff Zucker, that they did not know at some point moving on in those proceedings that the Steele dossier was a load of crap. Of course they did. Flash forward to 2019. You can't tell me that someone at #NeverCNN, 2019 into 2020, did not know that Hunter Biden's laptop was real as they reported that it was Russian disinformation. They moved on from 2.5 years of breathless, this is the one that's going to get him coverage over the Russian collusion scandal, which was wholly made up. All of it was made up and paid for by Democrats, into the January 6th saga that they dutifully turned into something that it wasn't. January 6th was bad. January 6th, for many, was unlawful. January 6th was never an insurrection, by definition. However, you believe these mainstream media networks, they spent years galvanizing that into the fabric of the American people. And so if you don't think that they'll do everything in their power to recreate that, I think you're fooling yourself. I think you're fooling yourself. In the meantime, the media is desperate to get a quote from Ron DeSantis on this, and they have done so. As Ron DeSantis was at an event earlier, I guess it was yesterday, in which he responded to media questions regarding his role should Donald Trump get indicted. Here's Governor Ron DeSantis. And by the way, listen to this closely because it's absolutely brilliant.
Trump indictment, and if you have any role in it, if charges are brought on him, will you have
That's going to be low. That's the reporter. She's asking about the Trump indictment.
So I've seen rumors swirl. I have not seen any facts yet, and so I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know this. The Manhattan District Attorney is a Soros-funded prosecutor. And so he, like other Soros-funded prosecutors, they weaponize their office to impose a political agenda on society at the expense of the rule of law and public safety. He has downgraded over 50% of the felonies to misdemeanors. He says he doesn't want to even have...
I have lost a channel on that, and so you're only getting that out of the left channel. So for those of you with only right-handed speakers, you heard nothing there. Isn't that how that works?
Sure.
Thanks, Weber. I mean, yeah, if your speakers are only right-handed, then you've got nothing coming out of the left. Or Republican. If you have Republican speakers, then you heard nothing from the political left, which were the speakers that were operating there. So Ron DeSantis spoke to it, said, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair, but then goes on to say Alvin Braggs is a Soros-backed DA who is going after Donald Trump for political reasons. So that is a political twofer. He dismissed the conversation, saying that obviously Alvin Bragg is a bad actor in all of this, but at the same time threw a little shade on his political rival, Donald Trump, who has done a little bit of the same over the last several months toward Ron DeSantis, calling him every nickname under the sun. So there's DeSantis weighing in on whether or not he would do anything or involve himself in any fashion with the attempt on the part of the political left to go after Donald Trump. In the meantime, here's an item that the media is not talking about. President Biden denied that his family received more than $1 million in payments from accounts related to Hunter Biden's business associates, Rob Walker, and their Chinese business ventures in 2017, even though we have the financial records and we know that he or someone in the family was paid money. Thursday, GOP lawmakers on the House Oversight Committee revealed that they had obtained bank records that showed that Hunter Biden, the president's brother Jim, and Haley Biden, who was the widow of his son Beau, all three received payments from Hunter Biden's business associate Rob Walker in their venture with a Chinese energy firm called CEFC. A spokesperson for Hunter Biden's legal team confirmed the payments Thursday, but emphasized that the receipts accounts, quote, belonged to Hunter, his uncle, and Haley, nobody else. However, Joe Biden denied that the payments were made at all when confronted by a reporter on the White House lawn Friday afternoon. Joe Biden, and I can play the clip, but it's very loud, and I can give you the three words. That's not true, he said, when asked about the GOP lawmakers' findings. So financial records that the Oversight Committee in the House, and the mainstream media is not reporting on this because this looks shady toward the Biden administration. They'll regale you with stories about the New York City grand jury that they don't really have any information on, but they're just speculating. They'll throw that out there till the cows come home, but they're not talking any about this, which is happening in the Oversight Committee, that the records now indicate and reveal that on March 1st, 2017, 2 months after then Vice President Joe Biden left office, a Chinese company wired $3 million to Robinson Walker, LLC. The next day, Robinson Walker, LLC wired over $1 million to the European Energy and Infrastructure Group in Abu Dhabi, a company associated with James Gillimore. Gillimore was a business partner of Hunter Biden's, involved in his foreign business dealings. Liberals are very good about moving the money. Here's what you need to know. In a span of 2 months, from March 6th, 2017 to May 18th, 2017, Robinson Walker LLC transferred $1 million plus to Joe Biden, or rather to Hunter Biden or Hunter Biden related entities. Hallie Biden, First Clearing LLC, JBBSR Incorporated, all Hunter Biden affiliated. And then there are the mysterious payments to someone called Biden, B-I-D-E-N, in quotes. Biden got $5,000 on March 6th. Biden got $25,000 on March 13th. Biden got $25,000 on April 21st. Biden got $25,000 on May 17th. Pardon me, the last one was 15, not 25. And so the question is now, who's Biden? Is that Jim, Hunter, Haley, or Joe? The big guy. Of course, you won't hear about any of this on the mainstream media because, after all, that reflects negatively on the current president of the United States, and everything's viewed through a partisan lens. All right, so I'll tell you what we'll do, because I think our next guest is here, one that I thought was coming up at 1 o'clock, and now he's here now. Jim Gingrich is running for mayor of the city of Nashville, and we'll sit down and talk with him in just a moment, an in-studio conversation with the mayoral candidate on the Matt Murphy Radio Show on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. Friends, if you've not taken me up on my advice to get to Savory Spice, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. Let's talk about it. Savory Spice has 2 incredible locations to serve you. One, right in the heart of Nashville at L&L Market. That's on Charlotte Pike. You can go there and see the incredible selection of, well, Savory Spice. There's also another in Franklin, just off the square next to Gray's Market. That was the original. You walk in and you'll see the vast, it's an absolute incredible display of different salts and spices, mixtures and combos that you've never imagined. They've got vanilla. They've got everything at pricing that is affordable to the wallet, but at the same time, it is of superior quality to anything you're going to get in the grocery store. the specialty spice company. It's what they do at Savory Spice. So I encourage you to up your spice game, right? You've upped the food game. If you're going and getting the special cut of steak or the special cut of salmon, and then you're just grabbing something that you've had on the shelf to spice it up that has been there for 5 years and was of low quality when you bought it, you're doing it wrong. Up the food game by upping the spice game. Head off to Savory Spice, online or in person. Savory Spice in Franklin and in Delano Market on Charlotte Pike. It is 121, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I think we've digested the charges facing the former president of the United States and how that all should play out over the course of the next week. I expect it to be a continued dog and pony show and a circus, and we'll continue talking about it throughout the course of the week. Also, later on this afternoon in the 2 o'clock hour, we'll circle back to some of the activities going on in the General Assembly with our good friend John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. There's a couple of bills happening within the GA that John has some thoughts on, and we'll do that in the 2 o'clock hour. Looking forward to that. There's also a reported confidence vote or vote of no confidence, depending on your perspective, amongst the Republican caucus in the General Assembly Senate with regard to Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. I'm not here to relitigate all of that. You guys know the backstory, the basic backstory. Randy McNally accused of sending, nothing illegal, nothing unethical in terms of the duties of his job, but just very odd messages to individuals on his social media platforms, and that has caused a vote of confidence or no confidence amongst the caucus. That's a private vote. But we'll give you some of the details if any of our, you got little spiders and little sleuths running around the Capitol building. So if anybody gives me any info on that, I'll let you know. In the meantime, obviously it was of somewhat a surprise to many of us. I'm new to town, right? So I don't presuppose I know anything about the goings-on of Nashville politics. But it was a little bit of a surprise to me, at least, that John Cooper made the decision that he would not be running for re-election for mayor of Nashville. And that gave a lot of people who love the city an opportunity to step forward and offer themselves to public service. One of those individuals is Jim Gingrich. I don't know a lot about Jim. I don't know if you know a lot about Jim, but we're going to learn together as he is sitting in studio with us to talk about his candidacy for mayor of Nashville. Jim, thanks for coming on today.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, your history, and what leads you into the political arena.
Well, I got here about 5 years ago. It's come up on 5 years because I moved a company here called Alliance Bernstein. I was the chief operating officer and led the process to decide where to move the headquarters. I fell in love with Nashville for a whole host of reasons we can discuss, and we all loved it enough to move a company here, and I retired here and plan to live here the rest of my days.
So tell me about, where did the company come from?
The headquarters were in New York.
Okay. And what led you, I mean, I can imagine some of the wonderful parts of Nashville that would lead you here from a personal standpoint, but from a business standpoint, what led you here?
Well, it's a good question because Alliance Bernstein's headquarters had been in New York for 50 plus years. So it was a big decision to decide to move the headquarters. There are a slew of reasons why a business would find Nashville attractive, but in many cases, it's the same reason that you and I would love to live here because it is a great city with a wonderful quality of life, very welcoming, warm people, and a big part of what you're trying to decide when you're moving a company or setting up an operation is where can you get the very best talent, and we have a wonderful academic community here, whether or not you're talking about Lipscomb or Belmont or the HBCUs and Vanderbilt. And it's also a place that, as we all know, as you just said, you just moved here, it's a place that people want to be.
I mean, it very much has an it factor going on with it, does it not?
It is a wonderful city.
I mean, the shine hasn't worn off for me just yet, Jim. Maybe you've been here longer than me, but I like to say that I know that you're supposed to call your new girlfriend pretty, but my new girlfriend sure is pretty. Middle Tennessee and the entire state and the region of the world. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So what led you to make the decision regarding politics and your run for mayor?
Well, we just touched on it because we have a city that's growing. Some would say growing in a way that is unrestrained and chaotic and a little unplanned. And I think a lot of us worry that that growth is threatening a lot of what makes this place so special, particularly if we don't deal with some of the issues that come about when you grow. We feel it every day in terms of what it costs to live here, how it's changing our neighborhoods, when we're stuck in traffic, when we can't get a pothole fix, our schools, our crime. It's a whole host of things that frankly, as a city, we haven't done enough to deal with that set of challenges.
What would you describe? I know it's kind of an easy, a little bit of a layup question, but it's a good way to start delving into some of the particular issues. When I ask, what would you classify as one or two of the biggest issues that you see facing Nashville?
Well, in some ways, there is only one issue, which is growth that is unrestrained, and we're not doing the things to deal with that growth. Once you move beyond that, we have kicked the can so far down the road on what are now big city challenges that to pick one or two is probably not the right approach. And on top of that, they're connected. So you can't untangle, for example, affordable housing, education, transit. Let me give you an example. If I can't afford to live in our county, which too many people can't afford to do, and I move across the border, all of a sudden then those folks, if you look at our population growth in the region, over 90% of the population growth last 5 years is in the surrounding counties. And many of those people are then commuting into town.
Well, I'll give you a good example, Jim. You're looking at him, right? My wife held back based on her work for about 9 months. And so I was going to be in the city for, roughly 9 months. It turned out to almost be a year, but by myself. And I looked around and, I'm by no means a wealthy person, but we're not paid poorly either. But I looked around while maintaining our home in Birmingham, Alabama, to find, something in the neighborhood of, I don't know, $1,500. 1 bedroom. I'm looking for, something plain Jane, simple. Couldn't find it. Could not find it in Davidson County. Not in a location that I would feel safe in or I'd want to be. And so I was a byproduct of that lack of affordable housing option. And as much as I found myself in Goodlettsville, I actually maintained a little sliver of Davidson County up there, but I was in a camper up there, but that's a different story for a different day. And now I'm in Mount Juliet. We located in Mount Juliet while we're trying to figure out where we want to find a permanent home. And that very well may end up in Davidson County. But I said to my wife, I don't know if you're somebody that's just starting out, how you would figure out, absent, roommates and some other creative finagling, how you would figure out where to live in Davidson County.
You're really touching on, I think, an important point, which is this issue of growth and housing being one piece of that affects everyone. Where it is the biggest challenge, though, is for anybody who's kind of middle class or below in terms of income, because if you're a city worker, whether or not you're a teacher or a firefighter or you're picking up somebody's garbage, the idea that the people who serve our city can't afford to live in the city they serve is a problem. And as you're pointing out, now you're commuting in from Mount Juliet. And so those issues are linked. Okay, so when we're stuck in traffic,
right, because it's putting more traffic on the roads, et cetera.
Yeah.
Sure. Hold your thought there. Jim Gingrich is running for mayor of Nashville. We just started the conversation. I got him in here a little bit early, and I appreciate his willingness to do that. We've got a short time out to take at 1:30, and we'll be back and continue the conversation with Jim Gingrich on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. All right, friends, so I have mentioned this story many, many times as I talk to you about the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. I've had lower back pain for a long time, and I was looking for chiropractic care to alleviate me of some of the pain issues that I was having, and I found myself taking more and more over-the-counter pain medication to try to alleviate that pain. I wanted to eliminate it. I met Dr. Gill. I went to the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. We talked about the fact that he brought decompression therapy to Middle Tennessee some 30-plus years ago. I began my treatments. Dr. Wendy, through my initial examination, identified a compression in my neck I didn't know that I had that was causing pain to radiate to my shoulders. That's gone. That's over. I don't have that anymore. And now we've mitigated the lower back pain to the point that I don't have to take pills and I don't have to consider surgery. And that is a blessing. I'm able to play golf with more regularity. I love it. Absolutely love everything about it. Now, for $23, you can be a part of the Dr. Gill family as well. $23 will get you an initial examination. They'll sit down with you. They'll talk to you about where you're feeling the pain. They'll go over their procedures with you. They'll take x-rays, and then eventually they'll talk about findings and a solution to your pain issues. There's a new number that I need to tell you about for that $23 special, though. 882-4838. That's 615, of course. 882-4838. Call that, tell them Murphy sent you, and get an appointment today with the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11, or jumping into energy stocks, or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors, because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. I promised you when, as John Cooper announced he was not running for re-election of mayor, that we would bring on as many mayoral candidates as we possibly could in an effort to make you as informed as you can possibly be, those of you going out and voting for the next mayor come August, I guess it is. We have Jim Gingrich in studio. He's running for mayor, talking with him about his background and decision to run. And we're kind of just getting into this next question, Jim, and it's a perfect way to parlay us into a number of these isolated issues. And that is, how would you, I mean, I don't guess you necessarily in a mayor's race have to define yourself as a Republican or a Democrat, but how would you characterize yourself politically?
I align better with the Democrats. Yes, I'm a Democrat.
Well, and when you say that, what does it mean to you? What is that party affiliation, or what does that political ideology mean to you?
Particularly on social issues, I'm much more comfortable with where the Democratic Party is.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe in Nashville, and that kind of leads us to some of the issues that we've been dealing with, do you believe that Nashville should be a little frustrated with some of the actions on the General Assembly side? I mean, the General Assembly, for example, shrinking the Metro Council. Where are you on this issue?
So I think I would say at least two things, okay? One, really unfortunate what has happened. This, no matter where you stand on 20, I don't think anybody likes how we got to this point. I think the other thing I would say is that what is transpiring is a great example of why people are so frustrated with politics today. Mm-hmm. We had either people in the past or politicians right now trying to score political points rather than thinking about what's best for whether or not it's the citizens of Nashville, the people in the greater Nashville region, or the state. Because I think it's the current environment is not productive for anybody who lives in the state. The fact is that Nashville, over the last 10 years, this region accounted for 50% of the economic growth in the state. It's why
Nashville spends a lot of money too,
and that generates a lot of tax revenue. That is correct. And
well, what I mean by that is the Nashville government spends a lot of money too. I mean, they overspend a little bit.
We can come back to that. Let's just stay on the first question. I think the fact is it's why I participated and I co-signed on to a letter to the legislative leadership, kind of asking for us all to step back and let calmer heads prevail, because we need to get back to a productive relationship with not only the state but surrounding counties, other major cities in the state, because ultimately we're going to rise or fall together.
So I talked to a lot of the members of the General Assembly, and they, they don't shy away from the fact that this, in their minds, was a while coming, but that the decision on the part of the Metro Council to not consider the RNC and the amount of money that something of that size would obviously bring into the city was something of the straw breaking the camel's back. Do you think maybe more consideration should have been made on the part of the county? I understand as mayor that you're separate from that body, but you have to work intimately with the Metro Council. I mean, did they cut off their nose to spite their face when they decided not to send a letter of interest to the RNC?
Again, without getting into specifics, I can point to a series of situations where we've had everybody. My parents used to say it takes two to fight, 3 boys. And I think each side could be carrying themselves more in a way that what is best for all of us that live here, rather than thinking about what's my next reelection or how do I get to the next highest office.
Notably, there were 2 ways to handle that situation for the city. One was the Metro Council to send a letter of interest. The other was the mayor to send a letter of interest. The mayor chose not to, but then he has now sent a letter of interest for the 2028 RNC. Do you support that decision?
What? Oh, that I think we should be open to any political convention that wants to come to town, and you have to look at the merits of each one. I mean, these things are not cheap to put on. So I'm not familiar with what was negotiated previously. You have to make sure this is a situation where both people can be safe and it doesn't break the city's bank and it doesn't shut the city down.
And it's obviously one of the reasons you mentioned the amount of revenue that comes into Nashville. I mean, this is the way that Nashville makes its money, right? Obviously through tourism and through draws like the country music industry, et cetera, but also through conventions. And this would just be a hyper, obviously a partisan event, but it would be like kind of take your typical, I'm sure you've been to many of them, Jim, take your typical convention, put it on steroids, and that's what you're talking about for something like the RNC or the DNC for that matter.
Yes.
So talk to me about crime. Does Nashville have a crime problem?
We have a safety issue. Yeah.
What can the mayor do?
So let's just talk about it for a second, because I'm not sure everybody understands the dimensions of it. Our violent crime rate is 60, 70, 80% higher than what I would think of as our peer cities, places like Charlotte or Austin, Denver, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Boston. We are, in terms of other state capitals, we have one of the highest violent crime rates of any state capital. And we have had for some time. We've had, I think the last 3 years, we've had over 100 homicides in the city. I think that's the first time that's ever happened 3 years in a row. So it's something we do have to get serious about.
Where do you start as mayor?
I think we need to have a comprehensive crime prevention strategy. A piece of that is obviously ensuring that the police force, MNPD, is properly funded, but it has to go well beyond that. It has to include things like how do we constructively intervene with youth that are at risk. We have to start talking about workforce development. We have to talk about how do we scale violence interruption efforts across the city. So it really needs to be an effort that cuts across metro departments, involves all our community partners, involves the communities. It is a significant effort, but it's also one that other cities have taken on in many cases successfully, and we need to be doing that here.
You mentioned funding of the police department, and I'm sad to note, I've been doing this a long time, and in the last 5 or 6 years, a discussion along these lines becomes, sadly, a partisan issue. And there's a lot of different factors that created that. But I'd like for you to explore that. I mean, right now I'm told that the Metro Nashville Police Department is down some 300 or so officers. I'm told with individuals within the department, within the academy particularly, that it's difficult to get individuals to step up to want to be a part of the academy, to become. I mean, do we need to see more of a welcoming attitude? Obviously, they've got to be held to the highest standards. Obviously, we are not going to want to put up with any sort of the types of things that we've seen in Memphis. I mean, that's obvious. But does there also need to be more of a welcoming approach from the mayor with regard to making sure that we get good and solid, decent, ethical people in the police department and get those numbers back up?
I think, first of all, I would agree with everything you just said, because I think that sometimes, again, we fall into this false trade-off that there is somehow you have to make a choice on any dimension around crime, and I would add too that crime has it's hard to pull apart crime and poverty. Crime, when there's a violent crime, studies have shown that within a half a mile to a mile radius, you have big impacts on mental health. Not surprisingly, particularly among kids, and particularly among young boys. Yeah, I mean, this is, and Chief Drake has really done a nice job in beginning to reduce turnover and start to build the number of recruiting classes. It's just something we need to encourage and, again, ensure that we are funding this in the proper way, because it's not just an issue of how many officers are on the street. You look at our emergency response times, we need to bring those down. There is a whole series of things that we can do, and we just need to get to work on it.
The two issues don't necessarily have to go side by side, but oftentimes they do. Homelessness and crime. Homelessness is not a criminal act, obviously, but a lot of times when you see a growth in homeless population, you see a growth in crime. I don't have a good sense of it because I've only been here 15, almost 16 months. You've been here a bit longer. Are we seeing a growing issue with homelessness, and what can we do as a city if you believe that it is every major city is going to have it. Every major city is going to deal with the same types of issues. But I have, in my time here, noticed a bit of a growth. What say you about it, Jim?
It's a challenge for Nashville. It's a challenge for every city. What I would say is that in Nashville, we need to get even more serious about, if we're going to deal with homelessness, we need to have much more investment in terms of permanent housing for those who are homeless. We have temporary housing, but that's temporary. And other cities are way in front of Nashville in terms of investing in permanent housing. Then you have to start to think about, how do we scale the support services that are necessary for people to get them back to a productive life, because that goes hand in hand with housing. And we haven't consistently funded that. We haven't scaled it to the level it needs to be scaled. Both those need to happen. And then we need to make this all data-driven. We've started down that process. We have a lot more work to do.
Okay, so
can I add one last thing?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think that where I've seen this done particularly successfully is when responsibility for this resides in the mayor's office.
So clarify for me what you mean when you say permanent housing, because when I hear, as someone who classifies myself as a libertarian, when I hear permanent housing, my red flags go up. Mm-hmm. Temporary housing is a transitionary point where we can get people off the street, get them, back to a position where they can begin, look for work, et cetera, or find them the mental health resources they need, and then transition them into a stable lifestyle where they can afford their own. What do you mean when you say permanent?
That is the objective, but temporary housing typically is not or at least oftentimes not conducive to the type of support that you're talking about. Nashville is in the process. For example, we broke ground last year on our first permanent supportive housing facility. It'll be 90 units, just under $300,000 a unit in terms of total cost. But you see other cities that are doing more creative things, whether or not that is motel purchases, where you can just speaking to somebody the other day, even here today in Nashville, you can do it at about $100,000 a unit. You can start to look at, Fisk is putting in dorm rooms that are shipping container dorm rooms at $40,000 a pop. It's those types of things that if we were really being creative, I think we could pursue.
I have to go a little bit rapid fire because we got, 3 or 4 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully we'll have many of these conversations moving forward. Spending. Does the city of Nashville spend too much money, or they spend it in the wrong places? I mean, I know they bring in a good amount of money, but they spend a lot of money, right?
It is Metro government is a big enterprise. It is the budget this year is in rough terms about $3 billion. Obviously, as we go into where the budget's being prepared for the next fiscal year, we're going to see a big uptick. I think what surprises people sometimes is if you look at our spending per capita. So in other words, we know that we've grown as a city. Our budget's grown. So let's think about how much we're spending on each resident. It's about 60% higher today than it was 10 years ago. And many people don't necessarily think they've seen a return on that additional 60%. I've never, coming out of the private sector as a business leader, I ran a budget about the size of Metro's budget, and I have never seen a budget where every dollar is being spent as best as it could.
So you think there's some savings that could be had there?
Whether or not
there's always ways.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's always opportunities. We also have a lot of needs in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So I think oftentimes people who are running for mayor ask, well, how are you going to pay for all that? And in my experience, as I said, in most budgets, to say that we have to find more money assumes that every process is optimized, every trade-off we've made the best decision in every case, and I've just never seen that.
As I tried to get to know, get up to speed with Nashville politics, anytime I brought up Mayor John Cooper when I first got here, there's a lot of lingering frustration about the property tax increase during the pandemic. Do you think that was the proper thing to do? Was that a mistake?
It was a big number, wasn't it?
It's like 34%?
Yeah. And so when we talk about our cost of living.
And especially the timing of when people were being, forced to stay home and not go to work, obviously due to the issues surrounding the pandemic.
I mean, I think what was frustrating to some of us was not just was whether or not that was the right decision in that year. We continued to move forward with that 34% increase and spend every dime of it. So I think the bigger question, though, is what I said at first. Our spending per capita is up 60%. We need to do a better job as Metro government of delivering return to all of our residents for the tax dollars. So
you wouldn't see in a Mayor Gingrich term, you wouldn't foresee any need to increase taxes on the people of Davidson County?
I think that's way too premature to say, right? Until you're actually into the numbers. What I will say is that I've never seen a situation where something is solved with money. And one of my frustrations is that we pat ourselves on the back as, politicians pat themselves on the back for appropriating money. You put money behind things that work.
That's right. Yeah, that's the government's like,
okay.
Throw some more money on it. It'll be fun.
First, figure out what's going to work. If it's not working, let's figure out how we make it work, and then we can talk about how we fund it.
Well, there's so much more on my list. We're sadly out of time, but I want you to come back because I'd love to continue to explore the relationship that the city has with the General Assembly. I want to get your thoughts on the revitalization of the East Bank and what the new stadium would mean and all of that. I mean, there's a lot more to talk about. But it's a great opening conversation.
Thank you. I have a lot to say on those things. So
I know you do. I know you do. Jim Gingrich is running for mayor. How can people find out more about your candidacy?
Go to jimfornashville.com, and you'll be able to find out how to get in touch with us. Send us an email. Happy to have a coffee with folks.
Let's do it again. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
There's Jim Gingrich. We'll be back in just a moment and wind up hour number 2, get into hour number 3 on The Murphy Show.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 47 degrees and sunny in Tennessee. Warming up a little bit from this morning, but that'll all cool back down here as we are headed into another freeze warning here that starts at 1 a.m. and it'll end 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So that'll be cold enough to kill plants and damage any unprotected water pipes. We've been dealing with now a few of these over the last week or so. We'll see temperatures as low as probably 28 degrees tonight. Weather coming up in just a few minutes. Former President Trump is trying to quash a report about efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. Aaron Katersky brings us some more.
Over 8 months, a special grand jury in Fulton County heard testimony from more than 75 witnesses about whether former President Trump or his allies interfered in the Georgia election results. The special grand jury did not have the power to hand up indictments, but the forewoman gave interviews in which she said the panel recommended indictments for multiple individuals. Trump's attorneys called it bizarre and said the results of the investigation cannot be relied upon. They want the special grand jury's report suppressed and the district attorney removed.
Crime right now in Tennessee. Metro Nashville police are investigating a shooting that sent one person to the hospital with serious injuries. This happened this morning at the Econo Lodge on Percy Priest Drive around 8:30 a.m. One person was transported to Vanderbilt Medical Center with serious injuries. Police have the suspect in custody, and this investigation continues. Over to the nation's capital, the Supreme Court heard arguments today as to whether the government has a duty to provide water to the Navajo Nation and share more of the drought-stricken Colorado River. Im Nguyen gives us more.
The Supreme Court considering a case stemming from the treaties between the Navajo Nation and the U.S. government, which vow to reserve a permanent home for the tribe. The tribe claims that should include bolstering its water supply from the increasingly strained Colorado River. Frederick Liu represents the government, which disagrees.
The Navajo Nation is free to develop its own infrastructure projects.
He said the tribe should try to access groundwater.
What the Navajo Nation cannot do, however, is to impose on the United States a duty that the government has never expressly accepted.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
When I first got to Nashville, I asked around the radio station and amongst my friends about financial planners. Paul Winkler's name came up over and over again. I sat down with Paul, and for an hour and a half, we talked about his financial planning philosophy, and I love the way this man does business. And I said, Paul, I need to tell the world about you. And Paul said, well, yeah, you do. And now I do. And I am required by the government regulations to tell you every time that I do this commercial that I get paid for it. I'm incentivized to say nice things, but I don't need to be incentivized to say nice things about Paul because I believe in Paul's message. I've become a client myself, I believe so much. I'm impressed with his knowledge of the financial world and his ability to help us understand it. It's not a matter of trust, although I trust him as the day is long. It is a matter of understanding where our money's going, how it's being planned, how it's being invested, and how we are protecting and growing my nest egg. Set up a 15-minute telephone conversation right now at paulwinkler.com. That's paulwinkler.com, or give them a call. 10 offices to serve. 615-851-1950. 851-1950 for Paul Winkler. 2:05, Matt Murphy Show continues. Hour number 3. It's flown by already, discussing the possible indictment and arrest of a former president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. He says he'll be arrested sometime this week. No word from the local DA. It's a sham of a case. We talked about it in the first hour. We met yet another mayoral candidate in the second hour. Jim Gingrich has thrown his hat into the ring. I think we've had Natisha Brooks on now and Jim Gingrich. We'll invite all of them. And look, he did not fare so well. Jim did not fare so well on the super text line. He was kind of slaughtered on the super text line. And I get that. I understand that. Mine is to allow him to present his political message to the people in and around Davidson County and the affected people regarding his candidacy for mayor. Obviously, he said a lot of things, some of which did not sit well with some of you. Bob writes, I mean, I could go over them. I won't necessarily do that now. I might have time to do a mean. We should do like a mean tweets segment because, man, oh man, like 2308 said, this guy will fit in just great. Doesn't have a clue what you're asking him. 2886, he's stammering for his perfect answers so he doesn't have to step on anyone's toes or no one can nail him down about these subjects. 0227, Murphy, this guy is a straight Democrat that can't answer the important questions. Kick his butt. He didn't say butt. Kick his butt out. Let's talk about something more important. I think the future of Nashville is important. And I think it's important that we get these folks on the record. So I've invited all of them, and I understand that some of them are going to be Democrats, and obviously Jim Gingrich was. And there it is. I mean, he was, I guess based on his words, he was surprisingly pro-police. Guess we could say that about him. We can't say that about this fella. Joe Biden made a statement today regarding his veto, first veto of Joe Biden's presidency. And it was all about environmental justice. More on that coming up at 2:30 or so. Right now, a good friend of the show, John Harris, is with the Tennessee Firearms Association. There's a number of bills affecting the Second Amendment going through the General Assembly, and wanted John's expertise and analysis on said same, and he joins us via the phone lines this afternoon. John, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
John, I want to start with you on the an issue that you brought to my attention we had a brief conversation about this yesterday, and then you sent me some information about Tennessee being somewhat of an outlier with regard to long guns and the legality of carrying long guns. And I don't want to misstate where Tennessee currently is and where we could be to get in more in line with where just about every other state in the union is. Tell me about this subject.
Yeah, most states, 46 of them, don't regulate or prohibit long arm possession. Tennessee is one. None of the states that touch Tennessee regulates long arm possession. Tennessee prohibits it in terms of carrying in public. Now, we have had a law since July of 2014 that allows people, if they lawfully possess the long arm, to transport it in a personal vehicle, loaded or unloaded, but you can't get out with it. And so the graphic that I sent you was a U.S. map that we'd put together and we gave the data source for our compilation that shows that substantially all of the states in the country presently allow citizens to carry or to possess long arms in public.
And these states are allowing this just as a general right, as set down by the Second Amendment, right? There's really no additional laws necessary.
There's I think 2 or 3 states that will only do it if you have a permit. But the bulk of them, 42 of them, 44 of them maybe, don't require any permit at all. So you could, for example, in a lot of states, and if people remember a few years ago up in Virginia even, people were showing up at the Capitol on Second Amendment issues, and they had rifles strung over their shoulders out there on the Capitol grounds.
So how did Tennessee get here, John? Have you done a dive into how it came to be that it's not allowed to carry your long gun except under license?
Yeah, we have pulled and I say we, Tennessee Firearms Association. We've had a law clerk working for us, and he has pulled every Tennessee statute on firearms possession going back to 1801, and we became a state in 1796. So it's pretty complete package. And in general, Tennessee has prohibited carrying any firearm in public with the intent to go armed our entire existence as a state. And so, since it doesn't say handguns, most of the statutes have said firearms or weapons or guns. It has included the long arms, and other states have dealt with that, but Tennessee really never has. We still have today, and that's a big issue of debate in the legislature, that our existing law by default makes it a crime to carry with the intent, anything with the intent to go armed. And your opportunity to do so, for example, with a permit or the permitless carry law, is actually written and classified as an affirmative defense to that crime. And oddly enough, Tennessee's handgun permit is actually classified as a, quote, recreational license, so that they can revoke it if you're behind on your child support.
And this is something that you at the Tennessee Firearms Association, you've obviously sought to remedy this issue within the law, this affirmative defense issue. It's one of the first things that you and I talked about when I came to Nashville, was that there really wasn't a constitutional, quote-unquote, carry, even with the permitless carry that passed the General Assembly. Where are we? Well, before I ask you where are we on that, on constitutional carry, is there any legislation offered in this General Assembly to settle this long gun stuff?
Yes, there's actually a couple. The one that deals with it most comprehensively is House Bill 1005 and Senate Bill 1503. Now, House Bill 1005, it would do a couple of things. One, it gets rid of the presumption that it's a crime to carry with the intent to go armed, so that what you would end up with is effectively real constitutional carry, because it eliminates the requirement that you have a permit. And it basically would say anyone who can lawfully possess the firearm can carry it in public for any lawful purpose, including self-defense. The other thing that the bill does is it makes clear that carrying in public is for any firearm and not just a handgun.
And where is this in progress? Is it in committee?
Last Wednesday, it passed overwhelmingly in the House Civil Justice Subcommittee, or in the full committee, Civil Justice Committee, and that moved the bill forward to the House Finance Committee. But the House Finance note says that this is classified as a positive fiscal note, which means if the law passes, the state's actually going to increase its revenue as opposed to spending more money. The bill is up tomorrow, Senate Bill 1503, in the state Senate in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, that committee's got 9 members on it, 7 of whom are Republicans, and our head count as of today is only 3 of the 7 Republicans are supporting the bill.
So if you have a Republican senator on the Judiciary Committee and you believe in the Second Amendment, would it be your encouragement to contact your senator and let them know how you expect them to vote on 1503?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just your senator. I mean, we view, and the General Assembly sort of begrudgingly agrees, that when these senators are serving in subcommittees and committees, they're obligated not just to the constituents that put them in office, but because they're a committee level appointment and activity, that anyone in the state is their constituent.
John, this has everything to do with constitutional carry, just with long guns, but we also are endeavoring in getting true constitutional carry for handguns in the state of Tennessee as well. Where are we on that?
Same bill.
Okay, yeah, so same thing. So if we get one, we get the both.
Unless they amend the the long arm part out, yeah. But otherwise, the way they're currently written, we get both.
Also up for debate, and I've got a lot less heartburn about this now because I think I understand it a little bit better. It's a bill that would decriminalize possession of a firearm in an area where it was posted that no firearms are allowed. You probably have much more intimate familiarity with this, but at first I thought it was going to set up a fight between property ownership rights and Second Amendment rights, and that doesn't seem to be what it's doing. It really just decriminalizes the action of possessing the firearm, either inadvertently or for whatever reason, if you are found to be in possession in a, quote, no-gun zone. Do I have that right?
You have that right generally. And here's where the nuance lies on that particular issue. Tennessee and most states have a concept called criminal trespass. And if you've ever gone into a mall or other buildings and they've got signs up that say shirt required, shoes required, those are criminal trespass notices. And the way criminal trespass functions is the property owner manager has to give you notice that they require certain things to enter the property. And if you refuse to comply with that request, like, for example, you're not wearing a shirt, then they can ask you to leave. And if you refuse to leave the property, they can have you arrested for what's called criminal trespass. The difference in what we've had in Tennessee with this posting statute is there was no notice and request to leave requirement. So the minute you walked through the door, you committed the crime, whether it was inadvertent, a mistake, or whatever. And so I think what this bill is going to do, if it passes so that that criminal element is removed, is it would essentially roll us back to what is a more appropriate standard of criminal trespass, where the property owner would have to say, Mr. Murphy, we don't allow machine guns in the movie theater. You're going to have to go put it in the car. And then when you refuse to do it, then they could have you arrested.
Right. And are you and is the Tennessee Firearms Association comfortable with that dynamic?
Yes, that's much more palatable as a balance between Second Amendment concerns and property rights.
Right.
The problem came in when it was strict liability, that the property owner didn't have to do anything.
I would agree with you there, and I think it's the perfect balance between those two rights. That while I would encourage property owners to open themselves up to law-abiding Second Amendment supporters, some don't, and I suppose that is their right as well. I do have a question from the super text line, John, and it involves the issue of long guns. I've lost it here for just a second. Hold on. He is concerning long gun carry. How do I hunt on public land? What about the Bruin decision?
Yeah, the public land issue, we've got a statute that it falls within that same spectrum of affirmative defenses like the handgun permit. And it says if you're engaged in lawful hunting activities or other lawful activities that involve the possession of a long arm or even a handgun, that it's a defense to the charge. So you may have, for example, there's a state park over near Jackson, Tennessee, that's got a gun range in it that you can shoot handguns or rifles or shotguns on. So that would be a lawful activity that would give rise to that affirmative defense. The same is true for hunting, because the statute that creates the exceptions is 39-17-1308, and so it would provide that relief. Now, Bruin adds a whole new spectrum to this, because Bruin says, the Supreme Court decision from last June, if the restriction on the Second Amendment right or activity didn't exist in 1791, then it's unconstitutional for the restriction to exist today. And so what you're likely going to see in this handgun permit stuff and the long arm permit that we're seeing, that we talked about already, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lawsuit that's already been filed in Gibson County in West Tennessee that asserts under Bruin that Tennessee's existing laws prohibiting firearms or weapons in public parks, in or on greenways, even in public campgrounds, is unconstitutional because no such laws or analogs existed in 1791.
John Harris is with us with the Tennessee Firearms Association. You type in Tennessee Firearms Association on DuckDuckGo or Google or whatever your search engine is, you'll find them. It's a great organization. Your organization has put out a press release regarding somewhat regarding the lieutenant governor's saga that he's been going through over the past several weeks. Why did the TFA decide to do that?
We decided to put some information out on that, and we've tried to stay out of the issue of what I've called Instagram gate and what happened and why it happened. What we're looking at is the lieutenant governor, whether it's within a matter of weeks, within a matter of months, maybe even within a year or two, his tenure as lieutenant governor is going to end, in part because we know already he's had to have some health issues dealt with a pacemaker this year, and he's 79 years old, and he may not run again at some point. And so people are already lining up to be the next lieutenant governor. And so what we put out on Saturday was sort of our perspective and analysis, because it might happen sooner than later, of who would we support? Who should gun owners and conservatives support as potential next lieutenant governor? And the three, I think the most commonly discussed potential candidates were examined in that report. And what I looked at in it was what's been their voting record and what bills have they supported on Second Amendment issues? Have they voted for bills on Second Amendment issues? How do other conservative organizations rank these same people? We sort of covered that spectrum and drew a conclusion as to who we thought of the three most likely candidates right now, who we would most likely, put our encouragement behind if the time comes to select a new lieutenant governor.
And that release can be found on the website, TennesseeFirearms.com.
It can. It's on the right-hand column in the news. I think it's the second or third one down now.
I encourage people to go and examine that. I'm getting a couple of questions about the Senate committee, and you indicated that there's 9 members of the Judiciary Committee, 7 of which are Republicans, and you can only get 3 confirmed yes votes out of that. And several are asking who the others would be. I don't know if you have them at your fingertips, John, but who the 4 would be that are either squishy on it or are no votes on that matter.
Sure. Well, there are 2 Democrats, Sarah Kyle and London Lamar, both from Memphis. We anticipate they will be no votes. They typically are. The 4 Republicans who so far have not committed or indicated that they would support this are the chairman of the committee, Todd Gardenhire, the second vice chair, Paul Rose. Then there are 2 more Republican members, John Lundberg and a new senator from Memphis, Brent Taylor. Although he's from Memphis, he's still a Republican. And so those are the 4 that we're looking at and going, guys, we need at least 2 of you to step up and support your oath to defend the Second Amendment and the rest of the Constitution while you're at it. But right now, we've got 3 yes votes. We've got Kerry Roberts. We fully anticipate Dawn White, who's the vice chair. And then the Senate sponsor, John Stevens, is also a member of that committee, and we think he'll certainly vote for his own bill.
And I'm very time limited here, but I want to try to get this one out real quick. This from the super text line. I'm a Tennessee law enforcement officer. That law, I think he's talking about the criminality of criminal trespass law, is only enforced if you're armed while committing a crime. If you commit a burglary and have a gun with that, you'd be charged with that crime. You will not be charged with that by itself. How do you respond to that, John?
That's generally true. I mean, if you facilitate another crime in possession of a firearm, there's a specific statute that makes that a 10-year felony without probation or parole. The criminal trespass is really just going to be used if some property owner has a sign up that says no guns allowed, and then you walk in there anyhow. They would have to ask you to leave first, and if you refuse to do it, they could charge you. But frankly, most people are going to leave and say, I'll take my business elsewhere.
John, great stuff as always. I encourage folks to go over to the Tennessee Firearms Association website at TennesseeFirearms.com and find out further information about your recommendations concerning the Lieutenant Governor situation. Thanks. We'll have you on again soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, there's John Harris. More in a moment, 24 after. It's The Murphy Show. Hey, folks, Tennessee Men's Clinic was providing needed therapy for years and years and years before some of these other guys came onto the scene, and they've been doing it the right way every step of the way. Tennessee Men's Clinic was the originator in men-specific health care with regard to your testosterone levels, your PSA test, and other matters that are men-centric. So it's time to get tested. Gentlemen, I know how you are. I know you shy away from this kind of stuff. Man up and get it done. Call the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Schedule an appointment for less than $100. You walk in, you'll get a complete examination. You'll have a discussion point about energy levels and other aspects of your life that may have degraded over time and may be caused by a lowered testosterone level. Then they'll get to checking. They'll give you a blood sample. They'll get that blood work done, and then they'll have some answers that they can utilize. It only takes about an hour. You'll do it in-house during your initial consultation. Then we can talk about treatment that would be right for you. Get this done, men. And 2 locations to serve. Right there in the middle of Nashville. Always been there for well over a decade. And now in Cool Springs, brand new office to tell you about. Give them a call and schedule an appointment at either office today. 208-9090. 615-208-9090.
Some news with Silicon Valley Bank and a crash on Sunday that happened in White House. A body was later discovered next to the scene of that crash. Could it all be connected? 30 minutes after the hour right here, SuperTalk 99.7 WTN.
It sounds so confusing, McMurray, but it's supposed to. You will bring it all together in mere seconds on the news portion of Matt Murphy's broadcast portion of the broadcast day on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. In the meantime, this fellow's trying to explain some things to you. Let's hear from the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
I just signed this veto because the legislation passed by the Congress would put at risk the retirement savings of individuals across the country. They couldn't take into consideration investments that wouldn't be impacted by climate, impacted by overpaying executives. That's why I decided to veto it. This
is their video. I don't mean to laugh at the elderly and infirm, but this is their video that they put out. They put music behind it. This is from @POTUS on their Twitter feed, and the man is barely opening his. Sir, you need. What's the movie where you need to open your mouth a little wider when you speak? It's Gene Wilder, right? Oh, I'll get the movie in a second. Where he's holding his. Oh no, it's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You need to open your mouth a little wider when you speak. Joe, open up, buddy. Need to hear what you're saying. Mumble mouth.
He says that to the TV kid, right?
Oh yeah, yes. Mike TV.
Mike TV. That's what. Yep. I remember that.
Open your mouth a little wider when you speak. He had some good common sense. Yeah.
That's good.
She was a bad egg. So we'll talk about Joe, his first veto. Congratulations. It's like you made poopy, Joe. We'll do that next on The Murphy Show at SuperTalk 99.7 WTN.
.231, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 47 degrees and sunny, working our way up to a temperature that's making it a pretty decent day in Middle Tennessee, just kind of lifting themselves up from the cold that was this morning in Nashville. Tonight, it'll get back down to those temperatures. Freeze warning beginning at 1 a.m. tomorrow morning until 8 a.m. Could see temperatures as low as 28 degrees. Weather coming up in just a few minutes. Starting with the Federal Reserve, they're aware of risky practices at Silicon Valley Bank. They've been aware for more than a year, and they had apparently warned the bank of the problems prior to the failure. M. Nguyen has more.
Silicon Valley Bank's risky practices were on the Federal Reserve's radar for more than a year. In a 2021 review of the bank, the Fed found key weaknesses to SVB, including its handling of liquidity. By 2022, the Fed rated the bank deficient for governance and controls. The Fed had repeatedly warned the bank of its problems, but it still didn't prevent the bank's failure. The Fed is now conducting an internal review of how it supervised and regulated SVB, expected to be released May 1st.
Back here in the volunteer state, Channel 4 reports that police are looking into a crash that happened on Sunday in White House and ended with a body being discovered around a half-mile away. The body was found in a yard of a house. The crash happened near Pleasant Grove Road, where the car struck a pole. The man's body showed no visible injuries or trauma, but could have sustained some damage internally. The man's believed to be in his 50s, and an autopsy report will be conducted, and that'll lend some more details to this case. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
You know, I knew a guy one time years ago that bought a truck and never changed the oil in the truck. I mean, never. And it only lasted like 80,000 miles and it went kaput. You should have gotten, it was like a Toyota. You should have gotten like 200,000 miles on the truck, but you didn't because you didn't maintenance the vehicle. Let's talk about your AC, okay? Because if you put a new AC in your home, you've got a lifespan, right? There's going to come a time where that AC dies. And Jeff Eddy knows, and I know because I'm a student of efficient heating and cooling, that if you put a little bit of maintenance into the effort once a year, like you do your teeth or you do your oil changes in your car, you're going to get a lot more life out of that unit. That's not Jeff trying to upsell you on something. It's Jeff trying to help prevent maintenance issues becoming bigger issues. So It's time to get the thing maintenance because it's March after all. Get scheduled for a maintenance checkup on your AC with Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. The man is as trustworthy as the day is long. He is a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an Elite Pro partner with the Rheem. I know him personally, and I know he's going to offer you the best advice for your unit. He'll maintenance never over $125 for a maintenance charge, no matter how many units you have in your residence, and oftentimes it's much less than that. 615-784-4424, 784-4424, or efficienthvac.net.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11 or jumping into energy stocks or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
SuperTalk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and the Matt Murphy Show till 3 o'clock.
You should open your mouth a little wider when you speak.
Yes, that's right. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which was actually an allusion. You know what? This is actually an allusion to Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll. Carroll had, I think, the caterpillar saying that to Alice when she was through the looking glass. But it does.
You should open your mouth a little wider when you speak.
I think it goes for Joe Biden without saying that he needs to open his mouth a little wider when he speaks, when he tells us that he's vetoing legislation.
I just signed this veto because legislation passed by the Congress would put at risk the retirement savings of individuals across the country. They couldn't take into consideration investments that wouldn't be impacted by climate, impacted by overpaying executives. And that's why I decided to veto it. It makes sense to veto it. I just
he had to have a nappy after the 20-second statement. Yeah, Joe Biden, his first veto in his presidential administration, deciding that the first veto of his presidency would be to Now, obviously, Joe's had the enjoyment of a Democrat legislature. Now he has a Republican House of Representatives. But Joe decided to block a resolution passed by Congress and signed on to by Democrats that would have prohibited retirement plan fiduciaries from considering environmental, social, and governance, ESG factors, in making their investment decisions. I just signed the veto because legislation passed risk of savings across the country. They couldn't take into consideration the investment incentive that would be impacted by. I gotta take a nap. I can't finish. It's pretty close to the way he sounds. In early March, both chambers voted to pass a resolution blocking the Labor Department rule that would make it easier for investment firms, fiduciaries, to take into account climate change rather than focusing on returns for retirees. Friends, without reservation, may I tell you that if you are with an advisory firm that takes into account climate change beyond a return on investment for your individual retirement account, may I advise you to move your money somewhere else? Is that okay? If I won't tell you what to do with your money, but if I had money in a capacity by which my fiduciary, my retirement planner, was telling me that they really needed to consider the climate change initiative that would impact broadly the globe 40 years from now, when, by the way, I'm going to be dead, probably. I don't know. Am I making it to 89? Doubtful. Way doubtful. I would move my money somewhere else. I don't know about you, but I would move my money somewhere else. So there's Joe Biden offering his first veto of his administration. Kudos to you, Joe. That's really good. I've got an update on another story that we told you about last week. It was just an aside story. I didn't make a lot of it other than to congratulate the Mid-Vermont Christian School that decided, as opposed to devaluing their belief system, as opposed to sending mixed messages to their young girls' basketball team, that they would forfeit a basketball game. Rules are rules, and apparently in the state of Vermont, it is a rule that if someone declares themselves a girl, despite the fact that they have boy parts, that they are allowed on the female basketball team. As a result, the Mid-Vermont Christian School found themselves facing off in a tournament game against the Long Trail Mountain team. Long Trail Mountain had a player on their team that was a male to female transgender student. The Mid-Vermont Christian School discussed it with administrators and parents, and they declined to participate in the tournament game. The stated reason, per the head of the school, a woman by the name of Vicky Fogg, was that the transgender athlete being on the competing team gave them an unfair advantage, as well as provided a safety risk for the biological females competing against them. I'm about to tell you what happened here, and you're not going to believe me. Unless we push back on this nonsense, this is not going away. And I understand that if you're a part of the 0.25 to 0.4% of the population that is gender dysphoric, which is, I'm being generous with those figures, but it's somewhere around 0.25 to 0.4, or at least it was 3 years ago. I have no idea where this figure is now. Now that it's become fashionable, you can declare yourself transgender and get away with a lot of things that you couldn't get away with before you declared yourself transgender. That's the way that it seems. You insulate yourself from criticism, it appears, in this woke world when you declare yourself transgender. And so it's becoming fashionable, and it frankly is overpowering that minuscule portion of the population that is genuinely gender dysphoric. And I don't pretend that part of the population doesn't exist. They do. But for you that are genuinely gender dysphoric, you know as well as I do that the rest of society cannot conform itself to fit your individual gender dysphoria, nor should it be expected to. We're not going to change the way we've done public bathrooms for all of American history because you want to go to one or the other with the little kids of the opposite gender. Not necessarily for the little kids, just with the little kids. So I thought it was noble that the Mid-Vermont Christian School made this decision, understanding what the rules of the game were and understanding what the results would be. They voluntarily forfeited. They got it. We're out of the tournament. We understand what the rules are in the state of Vermont. The Principals Association, the VPA, has now ruled that not only it's not enough that they lost their game by forfeit. They have now disqualified the Mid-Vermont Christian School from ever competing again. I'm going to pause for effect so that you understand what this means. In February, the girls' basketball team at Mid-Vermont Christian School, here are the details, refused to participate in the tournament game against Long Trail Mountain. The stated reason was that there was a transgender athlete on their team, gave the competing team an unfair advantage, and provided a safety risk for the biological females competing against them. And frankly, it went against the basic Christian tenets of the Mid-Vermont Christian School. Fogg said, "We withdrew from the tournament because we believe playing against an opponent with a biological male jeopardizes the fairness of the game and the safety of our players. Allowing biological males to participate in women's sports sets a bad precedent for the future of women's sports in general." The Vermont Agency of Education said that their best practices law disallows student athletes to be discriminated against based on their gender identity. Any instance where the law is disputed must be arbitrated individually. Therefore, the VAE, which also allows transgender students to use bathrooms of their choosing and the locker room of their choosing that corresponds with their chosen gender identity on any given chosen gender identity day, they're now saying that the Mid-Vermont School violated the organization's policies on race, gender, and disability, as well as state law, and results in the school's teams no longer being allowed to participate in any future Vermont-sanctioned tournament or sport whatsoever. Are you not ready to fight back on this? Because I sure am. You understand it is not enough that you make allowances that there are people who are gender dysphoric. Now you must change your very fabric of life. You must accept, we're being told, that your 10-year-old girl has to go into the bathroom and use the bathroom with a 15-year-old boy. Because that 15-year-old boy identifies as female. Despite the fact that we have a history of sexual assault resulting from this type of behavior. Secondarily, it's not enough that you're not accepting of this behavior and that you're not accepting of these policies. The Mid-Vermont School, the Christian school here, those girls on that basketball team, they understood what their punishment would be for taking a stand here. They would not be allowed to compete. They would not be allowed to win. They would not be allowed to lose fairly on the court. They had to forfeit. And they accepted that punishment. But that wasn't enough for the state of Vermont, the Principals Association, as well as the Vermont Agency of Education, wants to further punish this school because of wrong think. They think that the Christians at that Christian school are thinking wrong about this, and they are going to stick it to them for no purpose other than to demand that they think differently or be punished. Wrong think. Wrong think. Where does that appear? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Big Brother is coming after you when it comes to this woke nonsense. You better be prepared to fight against it. Paul might have a solution for the youngsters. Paul's in Gallatin. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fabulous,
Thank you,
Paul. Thank you.
All right. You want to fight back? Here's how you fight back. For every school, like the one in Vermont, you go find some boy on the boys' team, slap a wig on him, say he's a girl. Because if you can just change any day of the week, you fight fire with fire. You go find yourself a good guy on your basketball team. You say, hey, identify as Loretta, go out there, help win, go back to being a boy the next day.
Well, it's going to, already we're seeing, because we were told, Paul, and you're dead on, by the way, you're going to have to ridicule this on their level to make them understand where this all goes. Because we were told, this isn't going to happen with any amount of regularity. Now, collegiate weightlifting teams are being forced to allow boys on the female weightlifting team. It's going to destroy female weightlifting. The more and more that men find themselves in a position where they, I don't know why you would do this, but the Leah Thomas she was just the tip of the spear, man. More and more of this is going to come out. It is a crying shame that the Mid-Vermont Christian School had to do this to begin with. It was unfortunate. But I applauded their courage in saying, you know what, we're going to stand up for our convictions. We believe what we believe, and we believe that it's wrong that our young women have to compete against young men simply because those young men choose to identify as females. No one hates that transgender person. I don't know who this person is. They might be legitimately gender dysphoric, but that gender dysphoria might preclude you from engaging in female athletics. Them's the breaks, kid. That's the way it goes. So just wanted to give you that quick update. Coming up in a moment, a Fauci video, if I can get to it. I don't know if I can. If not, we'll hold off on it tomorrow. We'll finish up and hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson after this. My friend Brink Fiddler and Defend Systems, they want to talk with you, business owners, you church or school decision makers. Let's talk about Defend Systems and what they do. It is a dangerous world that we live in, and it is important that we understand that, first and foremost, and it's important that we don't simply hope that others will take care of us in the unlikely and untimely event that we have danger in our midst through workplace violence or an active shooter situation. Odds are you'll never have to deal with this. But here's the deal, folks. Many companies, many churches, many schools have gone through the training provided by Defense Systems because they know that hope is not a plan. Hope is not an action plan. It is time to get trained. Active shooter and physical security expertise is right here in Middle Tennessee. And in a dangerously developing world, it's time that we put our thoughts and our words into action. Let's get trained together. Reach out today to Brink Fiddler and find out what he can offer your school, your church, your place of business, or any place that people gather. 615-236-6484, 236-6484, or defendsystems.com, defendsystems.com.
Vladimir Putin hosted Chinese President Xi Jinping the other day. What could have came from their meetings? And a crash in Tennessee ends in 2 teenagers' death. That and more coming up 3 o'clock right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Not to get ahead of the story there, but man, that vehicle in Brentwood, I mean, caught fire and sadly 2 kids died. I'm sure that Mac Maury will have the full details for you coming up in mere moments. I went my full 3 hours and didn't play this for you.
No. The Persian culture is amazing. As a student of the Persian culture, not a practitioner, but a student.
That's your president. That's your president of the United States. I'm not a. Oh my God. Brian Wilson's coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow. So long, folks.
It's 3 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 49 degrees, almost to that 50-degree marker, a long way from where we've come from this morning. It was way chillier. Weather and traffic coming up next. Expected to get chillier tonight, by the way. Freeze warning 1 to 8 a.m. Again, weather, traffic coming up next. Days after an international court called for his arrest for war crimes on Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted his most powerful ally, calling China's President Xi Jinping dear friend. The Chinese leader has been trying to portray Beijing as a potential peacemaker in Ukraine. Tom Sufi Burridge is in Kyiv.
Putin and Xi see the world in the same way. They conduct politics at home in the same way too. I mean, this is them really setting out how they want to reset the global world order, really, on their terms, not on the terms of the United States and the West.
A crash here in Tennessee, a crash yesterday on Old Murfreesboro Road, ended in 2 teenagers dead, an infant injured. 19-year-old Toby Lackey was traveling north on a right curve, crossed the center line. It propelled the car further left, causing them to hit an embankment and a tree. Lackey and Callie Miner, a passenger who's also 19 years of age, were killed in that crash. The 2 teens were not wearing seatbelts, and the infant who was injured was in a car seat. The U.S. announced the release of an American missionary kidnapped in West Africa in 2016 after 6 years in captivity. Imna Wynn gives us more from Washington.
An American aid worker, Jeffrey Woodkey, who was kidnapped in Niger more than 6 years ago and held hostage by terrorists, has been released, according to U.S. officials. Secretary of State Antony Blinken thanked the Nigerian government and the U.S. State Department for their efforts.
I have no higher priority or focus than bringing home any unjustly detained American, wherever that is in the world.
Officials have yet to say how Woodkey was freed, though made it clear there was no direct negotiation between the U.S. and a terrorist organization.
And in sports and the effect financially from it, the NCAA men's basketball tournament down to the Sweet 16, game scheduled Thursday and Friday in Louisville, Kansas City, New York, and Las Vegas. Jim Ryan says the scams related to the big dance are playing out in every city and town.
Posing as betting sites like DraftKings or FanDuel, ripoff artists can send out phishing texts to tens or hundreds of thousands of potential victims. Cyber specialist Chris Drake says it's
so cheap, almost free, to send text messages from 10-digit phone numbers because they're pretending to be a person, and there's no fee for that.
Once hooked by a convincing text, victims might click on an embedded link and then give up sensitive financial information thinking they're entering a March Madness contest.
And the Volunteers will be in the Big Apple, ready to take on number 9 seed Florida Atlantic University, the Owls, at 8 p.m. Middle Tennessee time. FAU just beat 16 seed FDU Farley Dickinson last night. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.